Hello and welcome to our webinar titled Accessing and Using Data from the Early Head Start Family and Child Experiences Survey, also known as Baby Faces, Spring 2022. My name is Vrinda Mahishi, and I am a data project manager for the Child and Family Data Archive, or CF Data. This webinar is hosted by CF Data and the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation, or OPRE, within the Administration for Children and Families, ACF, in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We are joined today by our colleagues from Mathematica, Cassandra Baxter, who is a researcher, and Judy Cannon, who is a systems analyst, and they will be leading the presentation today. But before I turn it over to them, I will briefly introduce you to the Child and Family Data Archive and let you know a bit about the structure of this webinar. So CF Data is where you go to access the Baby Faces data sets. CF Data is supported by a contract from OPRE and housed at ICPSR within the University of Michigan. It is the place to discover, access, and analyze data on young children, their families and communities, and the programs that serve them. Users are able to access almost 400 data sets with the ability to analyze select data sets online. You can also search and compare variables and peruse data-related publications. And of course, user support is available to assist users in finding and obtaining data. For today's webinar, Cassandra and Judy will provide you with an overview of Baby Faces 2022, highlight some of the measures collected, and review potential research questions to explore. They will also provide information on the data file structure and conventions, weights and variance estimation, and data user resources. Following those sections, I will give an overview of CF Data and the resources that we have to support researchers. Importantly, I will share how you can request access to the Baby Faces data through our website. And then finally, we'll close this webinar with a brief question and answer session. And I am now happy to pass the presentation over to the Mathematica team to share more information on the Baby Faces data.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon. We're going to begin with an overview of early Head Start and Baby Faces, including its history, design, and the Baby Faces 2022 sample. Early Head Start programs provide intensive, comprehensive child development and family support services to low-income infants and toddlers under the age of 3 and to pregnant women and their families. The program began in 1995 and has grown from the initial 68 grantees to nearly 1,700 programs serving more than 192,000 children and families nationwide. Services respond to a family's full range of needs, from pregnancy through a child's third birthday. These include education and child development services, parenting education, case management, healthcare and referrals, and family support. Education services are delivered through center-based programs, family child care settings, or home visiting services. Home visiting services include weekly 90-minute visits with the family and child to support the parent in their role as the child's teacher, and twice monthly group socializations along with other comprehensive services. In addition to providing many services directly, programs form partnerships with other community service providers as vehicles for delivering some services. Sponsored by OPRE, Baby Faces is a nationally representative descriptive study of early Head Start. It was designed to inform program planning, technical assistance, and research at the national level by providing descriptive information about the quality, frequency, and intensity of early Head Start services, describing the characteristics, qualifications, and professional supports provided by staff working with early Head Start families, identifying key characteristics, strengths, and needs of families served by early Head Start, learning how early Head Start children and families are faring in key areas of child and family well-being, and exploring associations between the type and quality of early Head Start services and child and family well-being. The first cohort of baby faces was fielded in 2009 to 2012. It used a longitudinal design and followed two age cohorts of children, newborns and 1-year-olds, through their time in early Head Start. Baby Faces was redesigned in 2015 to employ a repeated cross-sectional approach to provide a comprehensive snapshot of early Head Start with nationally representative samples. The second cohort, Baby Faces 2018, was fielded in spring 2018 in 137 programs, mostly focusing on classroom processes. The third cohort, Baby Faces 2022, was fielded in spring 2022 in 99 programs and focused more on home visit processes. Baby Faces 2018 and 2022 address the overarching research question, how do early Head Start services support infant toddler growth and development in the context of nurturing responsive relationships? This broad conceptual framework of the Early Head Start program was developed to inform the study. Mathematica's Baby Faces team and partners from OPRE and the Office of Head Start in the Administration of Children and Families worked together with expert consultants to develop the framework that then served as the conceptual foundation for the study design. The conceptual framework depicts how and why program services are expected to lead to positive outcomes for infants and toddlers and their families. The framework shows the pathways from the Early Head Start program inputs at all levels to activities, including community engagement, program processes, and core services, to outputs, including comprehensive services from the community, program functioning, and the quality services offered to and received by family, and finally, the program goals of improving the lives of children and families. Some of the input factors may directly influence other layers of the framework. For example, the inputs of child and family characteristics are also directly associated with child and family outcomes. Data on child and family outcomes that programs gather also influence the inputs and the activities that programs perform, as shown by the dashed arrows on the top of the figure. The group then developed sub-frameworks that elaborated portions of the conceptual framework and served as a roadmap for the topics of interest. They are specific to understanding classroom and home visiting processes that support responsive relationships. They reflect both the research questions for Baby Faces 2018 and 2022 and ACF's priorities and interests. This is the sub-framework for understanding home visit processes, which demonstrates that the study focused on the quality of relationships across different aspects of service provision, parent-home visitor relationships, and parent-child relationships, home visit processes that may support responsive relationships, and parent engagement in practices and activities. These elements are shown in the boxes highlighted in the red text at the center of the sub-framework. On the left are program processes and functioning that support home visit processes, and on the right are infant and toddler outcomes and family well-being. The arrows in the figure show the pathways that link program processes and functioning, home visit processes, relationship quality, and infant and toddler outcomes and family well-being. There is a parallel sub-framework for understanding classroom processes. Baby Faces 2022 includes nationally representative samples of ACF regions 1 through 10 early Head Start programs, centers, home visitors, classrooms, teachers, and the families and children they serve. The sample did not include regions 11 and 12, that is American Indian and Alaska Native, and migrant and seasonal Head Start, or programs in Alaska, Hawaii, and the U.S. territories. We did not sample family child care programs or families participating in the family child care option because the number is small, and we did not sample pregnant women. The study's complex sample design incorporated multi-stage sampling, stratification, and unequal selection probabilities. The first stage of selection is early Head Start programs. The 2022 program sample is based on the 2018 program sample. And then we selected entirely new samples at all of their levels. We intended to retain as many programs as possible from the 2018 cohort in the next round of data collection, which was originally planned for spring 2020. To be representative, in late 2019, we freshened the sample to include programs that were newly funded and dropped programs that had closed. The COVID-19 pandemic interrupted the spring 2020 data collection, and the study had to be suspended until spring 2022. In spring 2022, we updated the sample to exclude sampled and recruited programs that had become ineligible in the interim or that had now declined to participate. Within each program, we randomly sampled an average of 8 home visitors and/or 3 centers, depending on the types of services the program provided. Within programs that offered home-based services, we randomly sampled 3 children and families from each of the sampled home visitors' caseloads, and within each center, we randomly sampled about 2 classrooms and teachers. Within the sample of centers, we randomly subsampled 3/4 of centers to have classroom observations and 2/3 to have child-level data collection, so 3 children and families per sampled classroom. Chapter 2 of the 2022 User's Guide provides information about the 2022 sample, including its design, participants, and response rates. The final sample includes 99 participating programs with 585 children in 451 classrooms in 245 centers and nearly 500 home visitors, with more than 900 children and families receiving home-based services. Note that not all participants completed all the relevant instruments or activities. We collected data over 5 months in spring 2022. Early Head Start program directors, center directors, and staff, home visitors and teachers, completed surveys via the web. We conducted classroom observations in person. We conducted home visit observations in person or virtually. For children age 1 or older receiving in-person home visit observations, we also video recorded parent-child interactions in the home outside of the home visit time if the child in the sample was 1 or older. Parents completed surveys by phone. In addition, child reports were completed on a web-based or paper form, depending on parent and staff preference. The responding sample for each of the data sources or instruments is provided in this table. While the selected samples at the program, center, classroom, teacher, home visitor, and child levels are nationally representative, a non-response bias analysis suggests that the responding sample at the program level may not be fully representative of the national sample. Therefore, we recommend interpreting the national representativeness of the estimates with caution. We'll discuss this in more detail when we describe the limitations of these data. This table presents the data sources at different levels and domains of measures covered. At the program and center level, program and center director surveys provide information on program characteristics and program processes and functioning. For example, staffing and professional development, program goals and data use, and how the COVID-19 pandemic affected services offered to children and families. At the teacher, classroom, or home visit level, the staff surveys provide information about their educational backgrounds and credentials, professional development and training experiences, classrooms and home visit processes. Classroom observations assess teacher-child relationship quality and classroom features. Home visit observations assess the quality of the parent-home visitor relationship and home visit practices. Staff also reported on the relationships with the study child and the parent. Note that while Babyfaces 2022 collected information on classroom processes, the focus was on understanding home visit processes, and this is reflected in our data collection procedures and the measures we examined, which we'll discuss next. Parent surveys provide information on demographics, household characteristics, home environment, program services received, needs and resources, parents' rating of their child and their own health status and well-being, and how the COVID-19 pandemic impacted their lives. Parents also reported on their relationship with the study child and with Early Head Start staff. For infant toddler learning and development, Baby Faces 2022 used parent and staff reported measures of child language and communication and social emotional development. Chapter 3 of the User's Guide describes the Baby Faces 2022 data collection, including an overview of the data collection procedures, instruments, and measures used. Now I'll present some highlights of the measures used in Baby Faces 2022. We assess teacher-child relationship quality through classroom observations and teacher reports. For classroom observations, we use the QSIT. Trained certified reviewers conducted observations for about 3 hours. The QSIT assesses the quality of childcare settings for infants and toddlers in center-based settings and family childcare homes. It includes 3 domains: support for social emotional development, for example, responding to emotional cues; support for language and literacy, for example, extending children's language use; and support for cognitive development, for example, supporting object exploration. We use the student-teacher relationship scale short form to assess teachers' perceptions of their relationships with individual children sampled in the classroom. This includes 2 subscales, closeness and conflict. The closeness subscale measures the extent to which a teacher feels that his or her relationship with a child is characterized by warmth, affection, and open communication. The conflict subscale assesses the degree to which a teacher feels that his or her relationship with a particular child is characterized by negativity. Both of these measures were used in Baby Faces 2018 and were unchanged for 2022. The classroom observation in 2018 also used the classroom assessment and scoring system, the CLASS, but it was not used again in 2022. We measured parent-teacher relationships using the CRQ adapted, which we administer to both parents and teachers. This measures parent-teacher relationships on the dimension of support. For example, parent and teacher discuss the best ways to meet the child needs. Endorsement, for example, the parent and teacher have similar goals for the child. Undermining, for example, the parent believes the teacher does not trust his or her abilities. And agreement, for example, the parent and teacher have the same standards for the child's behavior. This measure was also used in 2018, but modified for 2022. We assessed parent-home visitor relationship quality through home visitor and parent reports and home visit observations. Parents and home visitors reported on the parent-home visitor relationship using 3 measures. First, the Working Alliance Inventory assesses how home visitors and parents rate their level of collaboration and the extent to which they have a similar vision and goals for the home visiting services provided. It captures the nature of the relationship in 3 domains: goal setting, which measures agreement on the service goals; tasking, which measures agreement on how to achieve goals; and bonding, which measures parent and home visitor mutual appreciation and trust. Parents completed the support subscale of the CRQ adapted, and these items ask about how the home visitor and parent work together on supporting the child and parenting more specifically. Parents also completed the strengths-based practicing inventory to assess parent satisfaction on 4 subscales: empowerment approach, cultural competence, home visitors' sensitivity and/or knowledge, and supportiveness. As noted on the previous slide, the CRQ adapted was used in 2018 but modified in 2022, and the parent-reported Working Alliance inventory was also modified. The Home Visitors Working Alliance inventory was consistent across the 2018 and 2022 cohorts. Baby Faces also added a home visit observation that included 2 measures, the Hovers 3 and the MIDI. The Hovers 3 is an observational measure of the quality of home visit practices and family engagement. Baby Faces used 4 of the 7 scales listed here on the left that together comprise the quality of home visit practices summary score. The MIDI is a behavioral coding system that we use to assess the extent to which home visitors use motivational interview techniques with parents. We recorded and coded the middle 20 minutes of the home visit to, to score the MIDI. We used 6 interaction codes listed here on the top right. Next, we used 3 global scores that summarized how proficient home visitors are in the use of motivational interviewing techniques. And finally, we calculated 3 scale scores, including a relational global summary score, which is the mean rating of the partnership and empathy items, the percentage of total reflections that are complex, and a ratio of the total reflections to the total number of questions posed during the visit. We assessed parent relationships with the study child by coding parent-child interactions for home-based children and by using parent-reported information for the child-parent relationship subscale short form and the Healthy Families Parenting Inventory parent-child interaction subscale for all children. Babyface's 2022 video coded parent-child interactions for children who were receiving home-based services, were 12 months or older, and received an in-person home visit observation. Babyfaces used multiple coding schemes, including the complete set of scales for the Early Head Start Research Evaluation Project, 2 scales that originated from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development Study, and 1 child stress code that was developed specifically for Babyface's 2022. Together, the codes assess the levels of 6 parent behaviors listed here, 5 child behaviors listed here, and a didactic scale that measures the quality of the relationship, for example, relatedness and mutual engagement. Babyface's 2022 also used 2 parent-reported measures. The CPRS short form assesses parents' perceptions of their closeness and conflict with their child. And the HFPI parent interaction subscale assesses aspects of parents' responsiveness and sensitivity of the child and interactions with their child. Both the CPRS short form and the HFPI parent interaction scales were used in 2018 as well. However, the CPRS closeness scale was modified in 2022. Babyfaces used parent and staff reports to assess 1, child language and communication using the CDI, and 2, social emotional development using the BITSI for children 8 months or older. The CDI are available in English and Spanish for 3 age forms, the infant, toddler, and age 3 forms. We asked parents to complete the CDI in their home language in English or Spanish, and teachers completed the CDI in English for all study children. We derived 2 scores for the children's vocabulary skills. First, the number of words the child understands and the number of words the child both understands and uses. We conducted item response theory analyses using the common items to link across CDI forms to create a single item response theory score across the multiple age forms. And parents and teachers also reported on the use of first communicative gestures for infants, and staff rated children 31 months or older on language use and sentence complexity. The BITSI is a screener designed to detect possible delays in the acquisition of social emotional competencies, as well as social emotional and behavioral problems in children. Both measures were used in Babyface's 2018 and were unchanged for 2022. More information about each of the measures used in Babyface's 2022 is provided in Chapter 3 of the User's Guide, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. Next, I'm going to talk about potential research questions that can be answered using the Babyface's 2022 data and some considerations when using these data. The cross-sectional data in Babyface's 2022, similar to Babyface's 2018 data, provide a comprehensive snapshot at one point in time and describe the characteristics of early Head Start programs, teachers and home visitors, and classrooms and home visits, and the population of early Head Start children and families. The Babyface's 2022 data can be used to answer questions within each of the boxes of the sub-framework. For example, what are the home visit processes that might support responsive relationships? In the green circle. Or what does the parent-child relationship quality look like in home-based early Head Start, as shown in the yellow circle? We can use the data to look at associations of constructs between boxes. For example, how are home visit processes in the green circle associated with parent-child relationship quality in the yellow circle? We can also explore mechanisms and pathways in the associations. For example, do parent-child relationships, the yellow circle, mediate the association between home visit processes, the green circle, and infant-toddler outcomes in the blue circle? More generally, you can use Babyface's 2022 data to test the differences between two or more groups of children or staff, the relationships between the characteristics or environments of children and staff, and changes in the population of Head Start programs, centers, staff, and children and families over time by comparing estimates from the 2022 cohort to the 2018 cohort. You can conduct tests to ascertain whether these differences or relationships are significant, and you can estimate the variance and standard errors of the estimates, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. Users should keep in mind the limitations of the Babyface's 2022 data when doing analysis. Similar to Babyface's 2018, Babyface's 2022 is an observational cross-sectional study, and thus data cannot address causality or answer questions about program impacts. We cannot make conclusions about the direction when looking at associations between variables. For example, although we can look at concurrent associations between classroom and home visit processes and infant-toddler outcomes and family well-being, the findings could be misleading. For example, we might observe that children with higher quality classrooms have better language and social and emotional development. Children who enter with stronger skills, possibly because of home support or exposure to high quality classrooms at an earlier time. And children with stronger skills might elicit higher quality interactions from teachers. Any inferences we draw from these kinds of analyses would have the same issue regarding the direction of the association and should be interpreted with caution. Finally, our non-response bias analysis for Babyface's 2022 suggests that the responding sample at the program level in 2022 may not have been fully representative of the national sample, and we recommend interpreting the national representativeness of the estimates with caution. Non-response bias occurs when estimates based on the responses received are different than what they would have been had everyone responded. We adjusted our 2022 sampling weights, which account for selection probabilities, to account for differential response patterns across the selected sample. We conducted a non-response bias analysis to assess the extent of bias before and after these adjustments and found that at the program level, there do appear to be some remaining indicators of non-response bias after weighting, meaning that the weighted results potentially over or underrepresent certain types of programs. Therefore, estimates from these programs using the Babyface's 2022 data and the staff and children within them may not be fully representative of all early Head Start programs eligible for the Babyface's study. Chapter 2 of the 2022 User's Guide includes more information about these findings and suggests a set of covariates that can be used to help reduce the potential for non-response bias. Users can compare the weighted estimates from Babyface's 2022 to the weighted estimates from Babyface's 2018. Note that while there are 82 programs that participated in both 2018 and 2022, the data files did not include an indicator to flag returning programs. This decision was made because given the demands on the early childhood programs during the COVID-19 pandemic, the programs that were unable or unavailable to participate in 2022 may differ from the returning programs in unobserved ways. Users would instead compare the estimates weighted to represent all programs in a given year for each cohort. When comparing weighted estimates across the cohorts in 2018 versus 2022, note that some measures that were used in both 2018 and 2022 were modified in 2022 and therefore should not be compared or should be compared with caution. Chapter 3 of the User's Guide includes more information about the measures that differ across the two cohorts. And with that, Judy will now provide more details about the data files, weights, and data user resources.
Thanks, Cassandra. First, I will begin with an overview of the data file structure and conventions. This information is provided in Chapter 5 of the 2022 User's Guide, and the overall structure and conventions are consistent with the 2018 data files. The four Baby Faces 2022 files, similar to the 2018 files, are organized by data level. The child file includes all child-level data, including item responses and constructs or derived variables from the parent survey, parent-child report, staff-child report, the video coding of parent-child interactions, and home visit observations. The home visitor file contains all item responses and constructs from the home visitor survey. The class teacher file contains all item responses and constructs from the teacher survey and classroom observations. The director file has the data from the program director and center director surveys. It is important to note that the director file is mostly at the center director level because programs with multiple centers will have program director data repeated for each of their centers. On the director file, we also include some administrative data from the Office of Head Start Program Information Report and data from the Baby Faces 2022 center sampling frames. The structure of each of the files is similar. Each data file begins with a standard set of identifiers that can be used to link data files. These identifiers are followed by data flags indicating whether there is a completed instrument for each case. For example, whether or not a child has completed a parent survey, the sampling weights, constructed and derived variables, and item response data from each of the surveys and assessments. The one small exception in structure is the child file, which has demographic variables that are common across child-level instruments pulled up to the front of the file. Chapter 5 of the User's Guide reviews several data file conventions, including variable naming. For baby faces, the prefix indicates the source instruments from the variable. For example, all variables that begin with PI are from the parent interview survey, whereas variables that begin with PR are from the parent-child report. The 2 indicates that this is from Baby Faces 2022, whereas in Baby Faces 2018, 1 was used. For example, all variables from a parent survey begin with PI1 in the 2018 data files and PI2 in the 2022 data files. You can then quickly identify the source of a variable in both the variable name and the variable label. The rest of the variable name is based on the questionnaire or interview item number or a shortened description of the construct in the case of constructs. For example, the variable PI2M underscore EMPLY is mother employed. This makes it easy to go back to the questionnaire to understand how the question was asked and what the data represent. In general, all constructs derived from a given source maintain the same prefix as the source. Some construct variables, however, combine information across several sources and are not associated with any prefixes, such as child months, which is the child's age in months at their site visit. A few other exceptions that do not follow these conventions include identifiers and cross-sectional weights. To merge data across files, you will need to use identifiers provided on the data files. All IDs with the same name on each file are the same ID and can be used for linking between files. For example, the child level data file contains an ID for each child and an ID for their early Head Start programs, centers, teacher or home visitor, and classroom. The program and center IDs link to the director level file. The staff IDs of either the teacher or home visitor link to the class teacher or home visitor files, and the class ID links to the class teacher file. Remember that the director file is at the center level. Therefore, if you would like to conduct analysis at the program director level, you would first need to deduplicate the file using the program director ID, which is D2 underscore ID. The codebooks for each data file will list the identifiers available on the file. Baby Faces 2022 uses a set of standard codes across all instruments to identify missing data. These codes identify the different types of missing data, those resulting from legitimate skips, item non-response, and instrument non-response. and are consistent with the codes used in earlier cohorts. Item non-response occurs when there are missing data and individual items within a given instrument. We have not imputed for item level missing data in the files. Version missing occurs when an item was not included in the version of the instrument administered to a particular case. For example, some questions were asked of teachers in the staff child report that were not asked of home visitors, and vice versa. Since these data are together in the child file, questions that were not asked of a teacher or home visitor are marked with a .v. Instrument non-response occurs when an entire instrument is missing for a case. Instrument non-response in baby faces data is addressed through the application of the sampling weights. Users should determine how to handle data involving legitimate skips. They should also be certain to revisit the instruments to identify legitimate skips. The approach will depend on the question and the estimate. For example, if interested in estimating the percent of all children in center-based care, users should recode missing data to no center-based care. In contrast, if interested in the percent of children in care who are cared for in a center setting, users should leave missing data as missing. Now I will discuss the sampling weights and variance estimation for baby faces 2022. As a reminder, detailed information about the sampling design and weights is covered in Chapter 2 of the 2022 User's Guide. Baby faces is a complex study, and the datasets reflect this complexity. There are several features of baby faces and all large-scale national studies that are important to keep in mind when you use the 2022 data and the earlier baby faces datasets. These are reasons why you should use weighted data in your analysis. Since baby faces is designed to produce national estimates, it is important to use weights in order to adjust for probabilities of selection, adjust for non-response, identify eligible cases, and reduce potential bias. Baby faces 2022 weights vary according to level of analysis and source of data. There are 23 weights on the 2022 data files. When choosing a weight, you should consider your level of analysis and the sources of data. Chapter 2 of the Baby Faces User's Guide describes the process used to create the weights and provides a table designed to help you choose the correct weight. This list of weights is a small sample from the User's Guide table 2.3. The name of the weights are as descriptive as possible to identify how they apply. For example, if you would like to find the percentage of mothers that are employed for children in the Baby Faces 2022 study, you would take the mean of the variable listed here using the weight PI_WT. If you'd like to find the mean of the Hovers 3 relationship building with family scale score, which comes from the home visit observations, you would take the mean of the variable here using the weight Hovers_CH_WT. Note that if you are using the Hovers 3 data as a measure of the home visitor more generally, we suggest averaging the Hovers 3 scores across all associated children and merging the average score onto the home visitor level file. There are 2 home visitor level weights that require at least 1 Hovers to have been completed. More information about this is in the user's guide. If you would like to look at staff depression using the staff CESDR total score from the staff survey, you would take the mean of the variable here with the teacher or home visitor weights listed here. If you would like to look at depression across both surveys, you would stack the surveys and the weights. Once again, this information is detailed in Chapter 2 of the User's Guide. Similar conventions were used in Baby Faces 2018. In Baby Faces 2022, similar to the earlier cohorts, observations are not independent, which is an assumption of a simple random sample. Children in the same sample program are more likely to share characteristics. Therefore, it is important to make sure that you take this into account when selecting procedures to use in your analysis. When estimates of the standard errors are smaller, chances of finding statistically significant results increase. In other words, the T or F value increases. Taylor series and replication weight methods are ways of estimating the correct variance for complex survey design. In Babyface's 2022, similar to 2018, we use the Taylor series method. When there are clusters in the sample design, the Taylor series method estimates variance from the variation among clusters. When the design is stratified, the procedure pools stratum variance estimates to compute the overall variance estimate. You have many options for estimating variance and standard errors using the Taylor series method. Some of them are listed here. We have included the variables that are required by this method, strat and D2_ID, in the 2022 data files, which are used in conjunction with the appropriate sampling weight. For the Babyface's 2022 analysis, we use the SAS survey procedures, including proc survey means and proc survey freq, among others. Again, the 2022 sample design is described in Chapter 2 of the User's Guide. Data users should consult available resources to understand the 2022 Babyface's datasets. The Babyface's 2022 User's Guide is a key resource for information about the 2022 study design, data collection procedures, response rates, data review and editing and preparation for the file, data file structure and use, and details on the constructs created from the data. The User's Guide also includes appendices that provide detail on the data, including the non-response bias analysis tables, the Babyface's 2022 survey instruments, and classroom and home visit observation protocols, annotated with the source variable names for any non-copyrighted materials, reliability estimates for all measures, lists of the variables that have been removed or masked from any of the files containing source data due to rare events. The codebooks for each of the 4 Babyfaces files are stored as separate documents from the User's Guide. These codebooks include descriptions of each of the variables included in the files. It is important to note that individual item responses from any copyrighted assessments or observations are not included in the data files. The User's Guide details the original measures in text and provides the copyright statements required by the publishers. Note that the User's Guide and codebooks can be found in the Data and Documentation tab on the Babyfaces 2022 section of the Child and Family Data Archive website, which we will preview later in the presentation. Users can also reference the Babyfaces 2022 data tables, which provide key information about the design, methods, and findings of Babyfaces 2022. The report describes the children and families participating in Early Head Start, the services they receive, and the staff who serve them. It also describes how programs support staff to ensure they provide high-quality services and how the quality of those services relate to the well-being of children and families. You can find the data tables and other Babyfaces publications, including reports and briefs, on OPRE's website. Here is an example of the codebook that is provided for each file. Each codebook lists the variables included in the data file, their labels, simple statistics, and a description of the specifications used to create constructs or derived variables. The codebooks are organized to reflect the file structure as outlined earlier. Now I'm going to pass the presentation over to Brenda, who will share information on the Child and Family Data Archive and accessing the Babyfaces 2022 data.
Thanks, Judy. So as I mentioned earlier, the Child and Family Data Archive preserves and disseminates data on early care education and families and communities, as well as the programs that serve them. The Babyfaces 2022 data is just one of the hundreds of data sets archived at CF Data, along with accompanying documentation for secondary data analysis. And these data are available to researchers at no additional cost. CF Data has a range of data, including on federal and state-funded programs such as Head Start, the Child Care and Development Fund Block Grant, and the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. We also have administrative data, community-based surveys focused on parents and child development, and observational studies in classrooms and homes. The CF Data website is available at childandfamilydataarchive.org. Through the website, you can explore our data sets, learn more about childcare and education research, and discover the training opportunities presented by CF Data. We encourage new users to visit our Getting Started page on the website to help you get familiar with some of the resources available. And it includes kind of quick links to various resources, such as infographics that outline several of our studies and topics within CF Data, as well as links to the videos and a video on how to search for the data. Under the Data tab, users can search and browse the CF Data catalog, including by release date to find recently released or updated data, or by subject terms if you're not quite sure where to start. There's also a How to Access Data page that can help you learn more about the access methods and application process. We also have a variables tab and a publications tab, which allow users to search for variables across all studies housed at CF Data, or search through our data-related publications of interest, which shows which publications have cited a particular study. Under the About Us tab, you can learn more about CF Data, our project team, and about announcements, data releases, and upcoming trainings through the news link. We also have a collection of video resources on the website, which you can find under the Resources tab. Here you will find many videos of data release webinars and their accompanying slides, as well as data trainings offered by data producers. A video recording of today's webinar will be added to this page when it is available. So that was just a brief overview of CF Data, and we encourage you to explore our website to learn more, including watching a video under the About Us tab that introduces you to the collection and some more about the resources that we provide. And now let's turn to how you can access the Baby Faces 2022 data. To find the study, enter the study title or acronym in the search box, highlighted by the red oval, and hit enter, and that will take you to the search results page. So when you click on the Baby Faces 2022 study title, which is shown at the top of the results list, that will take you to the study homepage. Here we have a screenshot of the Baby Faces 2022 study homepage. The homepage is where you will find important information, such as a summary about the study and information on the study's methodology, sampling, weights, and more. The study homepage is also where users can search and compare variables and view publications based on the use of the Baby Faces 2022 data. So while users may preview and download the public documentation located on the Data and Documentation tab, a restricted data application is required for users to gain access to the restricted data. However, you can explore the data at the variable level without downloading the data. Using the variable search tab on the study homepage, you can search for and compare variables within the Baby Faces 2022 data, as is shown here. So you would find that this variable name would be found in dataset DS1. And then once you have decided that you'd like to use this data, you can begin your application by clicking on the Access Restricted Data button highlighted here, and then follow the instructions and complete the sections that are shown next. So the application requires several pieces of information, including a description of the intended research project, a data security plan, an IRB letter, and a signed restricted data use agreement. Archive staff are available to assist you with your application and to answer any questions. Just email us at cfdata-help@umich.edu. Include your application request number. Some important things to note. We encourage you to plan ahead because the application process can take some time, especially to gather signatures from your institution as required on our restricted data use application or agreement. And then once you have submitted your application, CF Data will provide initial feedback within 2 to 4 weeks and then work with you on how to get the application approved if there are any issues that need to be addressed. After it is approved, you will receive the data within 1 week. One other thing to note, for users that currently have active applications for prior baby faces, so 2012 and 2018, you do not need to start a new application. You would simply go to the data selection section of the application and select the new study, such as shown here, to add it to the existing application. You would then edit your study description to include information on why you need these particular data for your research, and then submit. We will review the modification and send the new data if approved. And now we are happy to take a few questions. So please feel free to type your question into the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand if you would like to ask a question out loud, and we can unmute your mic for you. I do see a couple questions have come in, so we can get started while you think of other questions to add. How long does it take for an application to be approved? What criteria are used to vet the application? Again, it usually takes around, we would say about 2 to 4 weeks for the initial feedback on the application. And if there are any issues that need to be corrected, we would just send you back the feedback and you would work with us to make sure that you get those issues approved. So it would take anywhere from 4 weeks to however long it takes to get those issues resolved. What criteria are used to vet the application? As seen on the previous slide, these are the items that are required within the application to be submitted. One thing I will note, we do require that the investigator of the application have a terminal degree, such as a PhD or JD or etc. But if you are a student or a researcher without a PhD, you can still gain access to the data. You would just need to have a sponsor listed as the investigator, and then you would be listed under research staff. If you have any questions while you are filling out this application, we encourage you to reach out to us and we can assist you further. Okay. The next question that I see is, can I link Babyface's 2018 data to Babyface's 2022 data for analysis?
I can take that. So no observations in Babyface's 2018 cannot be linked to observations in 2022 data. The 2022 program sample is based on the 2018 program sample, but the sample is entirely new at all of their levels. And so as I mentioned, while we had some programs in the 2018 cohort that returned for the 2022 cohort, we didn't flag those observations for the reasons we discussed earlier about those programs who returned being potentially different from those who didn't return in unobserved ways. So instead, users can aggregate the data to examine change over time. For example, you could examine how the characteristics of early Head Start program centers, staff, or families have changed over the rounds of data collection by comparing the weighted estimates of common data elements across the rounds. So just keep in mind that as we discussed, some of the measures were modified across the round. So just carefully consult the user's guide codebook and instruments to confirm whether the data elements are comparable across the rounds.
I see a question. Can I analyze the data without using weights? Does using the weights account for all missing data?
So to arrive at unbiased nationally representative estimates, you must use the weights to account for the unequal probability of selection and sampling and differential patterns of instrument non-response. So analysis without weights might produce biased estimates for the national population. For example, larger programs and larger centers had a higher chance of selection into the sample. And without weights to account for that, these larger entities are overrepresented in the sample. In addition, you have to correctly estimate the variance and standard errors for your statistical inference. So you need to account for this complex sampling design. And we discussed a couple of options. So you could consult that slide where we talk about replication methods and Taylor series methods, which is the method we used. And you can also use multi-level modeling to account for the clustering of families and children within teachers and home visitors within programs. And you could ensure you're using the weights correctly by trying to replicate a point estimate from the public data tables that we linked to in the data users resources section. And in terms of whether the weights account for all missing data, the weights account for missing data due to instrument non-response. For example, parents who did not respond to the parent survey, which is called unit non-response. But the weights do not account for item level missing data. So that's when someone responds to a survey but doesn't answer certain questions. And item level missing data can occur for many reasons. For example, they don't know the answer or they may refuse to answer. So you should carefully review the variables in your analysis to assess the extent of missing data and the reasons for the missing data. And there are a variety of methods for handling that. For example, multiple imputation, full information, maximum likelihood. And your approach is going to depend on your research question and the variables you're using in the analysis. And this is why the files don't include any imputed data.
Okay. Next we have, by program level, do you mean early Head Start? What is the difference between center and school levels?
So we mean early Head Start programs who receive the grants to administer early Head Start services, which can differ from the centers where children are receiving services. And programs can also operate home-based services. So there's a distinction between early Head Start programs, centers, and I lost the question. Here it goes. What's the difference between the center and the school levels? I think maybe, and please correct me if I haven't answered this question correctly, but so a center could be operating through a public school, but not necessarily. Early Head Start centers have many different settings. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I think we have time for just one more question. For the observational data, is there data of observations conducted with families speaking languages other than English, and were the observers speakers of the family's primary language?
Yangu, do you mind if I kick that to you?
Yeah, I can take that question. Yes, we also conducted the observation in Spanish other than English, but there's no other languages we used.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I think if we have not had a chance to get to your question, or if another question comes up, please, again, feel free to reach out to us at cfdata-help@umich.edu, and we can help get you that question answered. So I just want to remind everyone to visit the CF Data website to request access to these data. And you can also sign up for our listserv there to receive notifications on data release announcements, data webinars and workshops, as well as our quarterly newsletter. And I just want to thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Cassandra and Judy, for sharing all of this great information with us.